We're going to talk
Okay.
about just the most normal movie ever. Oh, Brother, Where Art Thou?
I love that movie. Okay, I'll wait.
No, that's all right. Go ahead.
I
love
love that movie, and I forgot it is one of my favorite movies, and I forgot how much I love it till I watched it last night. And no, when did I watch it? Tuesday night. I watched it election night. It was
Okay.
a perfect thing to do on election night, was just watch that movie. And one of the first things I love about it is I love the music in it.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
love the music, and I have the soundtrack, and that's one thing I love about it.
So let me tell you what's
And
been going through my head talking about music, because I in addition love that music. That soundtrack has been one of my top played soundtracks ever, right?
right.
But I'm getting ready in Advent this year to do a class on Maya Angelou's poetry. Okay.
Ah, nice.
And here's what it's called. Let me show you. Maybe I can show you. Maya Angelou and the poetry. Oh, something.
Oh, and the freedom poetry of
Advent.
Sounds
right?
wonderful.
Oh, wow.
And
Sounds wonderful.
one of our Christmas Eve poems is Caged Bird.
Mhm.
You know that poem?
Yes.
Yeah, an
Yes.
incredible poem. A free bird leaps on the back of the wind, but a bird that stalks down his narrow cage can seldom see through his bars of rage. Right? The cage bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill where the cage bird sings of freedom. I thought about that a lot as I was listening to the music, because a lot of those music are freedom type of songs. Get me out of what's a challenge, get me out of this unfair spot. And you have those three travelers going and discovering this world of non-freedom, right?
And having all these adventures, meeting all kinds of strange and interesting people.
Some of them good, some of them not quite so.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
This movie is based on the Odyssey, so it's an old tale. Thousands of years ago it began, and maybe he stole it from something before that. Who knows, right? The author. But this new interpretation of it brings it very close to home, as it looks through just about 100 years ago into our past. And says, what happens there? So where did you see God in the midst of the movie? Where did God appear for you?
Well, for me, I would say like one of the places was the camaraderie of the three guys traveling. And there was just like a couple really sweet places where, like, when they steal the pie and he puts $1 up, there were just, it was like they broke out of prison and they did all these things, but they were, basically really sweet guys.
Yeah. But I love Delmer especially, right? The crazed look that comes on his face as he stands there in the water and sees them being baptized, and he runs over, right? Thinks that's going to solve all his issues, and they still keep chasing him the next morning.
Right.
But you're right that he did get changed. Instead of just stealing the pie, he puts the $1 down.
Right.
Something was different about him. But I loved, in the midst of this, an ongoing set of growth that happened, right? Like at the beginning, Ulysses was using the two of them. I had to bring you along, he said at the end. I had to bring you along. We were chained together. I couldn't go without you. So I had to tell you the story that would get you out of there. Right? He was not happy because he had, a week or something left, or a couple of weeks left. Or I don't know, something, not very long.
Not very long, but his wife was getting married.
Yeah.
His
No,
ex-wife.
what I'm saying is that Pete, not Everett, but Pete, the other guy, didn't need to get out because he was getting out soon.
Right. Yeah,
Right.
they didn't need to get out.
And
They
Pete,
didn't need to break out.
right, and he's the one who ends up back in jail.
Right. Yes.
And there he is. He finds his friend in the movie theater, or his maybe not friend, and yet he chooses to alert them.
Right. He warns
into him.
them.
Right? So something happened in the midst of all that that says, I'm going to do this. I'm going to help. I'm going to connect to this friend, which is pretty cool, isn't it?
Yeah, because he should have been very angry. He should have been very angry and maybe been cursing him. Instead, he says, he warns them about, do not seek the treasure.
Do not seek
Seek
the
the
treasure.
treasure.
And yet,
That was funny.
then the other two come into the jail to break him out.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Reverse their trip somewhere and come back to that spot where they saw him and break him out of jail.
Mm-hmm.
Risking everything, maybe?
Mm-hmm.
Because of the connection that they had made.
Yep.
Who has helped you on your journey through life like that? That's what I keep thinking of. I look at that and I say, who are my Everetts? Who are my Delmers that have sometimes gotten me in trouble? Who are the characters that we've met on the way?
Okay, Sarah, it's your turn to talk.
Yeah, thinking. My mind goes to my high school girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she was quite the rebel.
Mm-hmm.
And I was, we were friends when I was, 8th grade and 9th grade. I just, she was ahead of me when it came to boys and seemed to, definitely had more of an understanding of what went on in the world than I did. And so I felt, like I looked up to her and I kind of envied her. She was about 6 months or so older than me. And, but I can remember, feeling like I had a real connection with her because we really were good friends.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, she was just so, I don't know, she was really a mess. And it was not good. And I kept trying to convince her to, like to straighten up and, not be so wild, not run around with guys. And she wouldn't listen to me. Yeah. There's no chance I could convince her to slow down.
The thing of it is, though, is the friends that we sometimes choose, especially during that part of life, are not based on the same type of criteria. Sometimes they're the next door neighbor, and so of course he's my friend because he's about my age, right? He's the one who's in the same classes as me, or or just some relatively random reason that becomes my reason for why he's my friend, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and with her, that really was not the case.
Okay.
She was not my next door neighbor. We could have easily not connected. There was something else, and I think that, I've looked back because I've been in therapy for some time, and I've looked back at my relationships and kind of what kinds of relationships I tended to forge, and she was basically really not in a very healthy place.
Yeah.
And I tended to choose friends like that and boyfriends like that and a husband like that and so forth. As I hadn't worked out my own issues, of course, you know, at that age, how can you even begin to really make progress on that? And with her, it's like I had a place to escape to from the craziness in my family.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was over at her house a lot. And she had craziness in her family. And her father, you know, had alcohol and maybe even drug issues and had trouble holding down a job. And then her mother was very steady and stable. And she didn't mind me being around over there at the house. And so it felt really nice. I remember my mother complaining, "You're always over at Jan's house." And it's like, but I just really needed to go somewhere.
Yeah.
And, you know, there was interesting stuff happening over there, you know, because Jan was there, you know, and she was always up to something crazy.
Yeah.
So it was interesting.
There's another favorite movie that I thought of a lot this week, and it's a movie, Stand By Me. Do you remember that movie?
Yes. Yes.
Based on the old Benny King song. And it's about four boys who walk down a railroad track and go to, you know, they're like 13 and they go because they hear there's a dead body down there. They're gonna go with that,
Right.
Yeah.
And I remember so well the last line of the movie, right? I think it's voiced by the grown up version of the kid, who I think is Richard Dreyfuss, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't remember. I've seen it, but it's been a while.
Yeah. You never see that character, but I think that's the voice. And he says this: I've never had friends like those I had since I've never had those like the friends I had when I was 13. And he pauses and he goes, "Christ, does anyone?"
Yeah.
Because there's something about those teenage years as we're forming ourselves and we're forming how we're going to relate to the world that brings us into company with very different types of people than what we may ever allow ourselves to connect to as we become more refined and better at choosing and, you know, or whatever it happens to be, you know?
Yeah.
But it seemed as if these three kind of let themselves into that same type of relationship. You know, they could have easily gone their separate ways, but they kept choosing in the midst of some really strange places, you know, like, you know, Pete got turned into a toad.
Yeah.
They could have left him behind type of thing, right? And yet they kept choosing each other.
Yeah. That's what I mean. They kind of stuck together once, like they were on the journey together. They stuck together and seemed like they helped each other.
Yeah.
Even though they were strangers when they started out, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is pretty remarkable, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder why it is that maybe it's just easy to not have to do it, you know, especially like I'm real aware today how much in larger cities, and I've been in a larger city for a long time, right? I lived in Phoenix for 20 years and then up and then here for about 7 now. In larger cities, it's really easy. You can hide from people and never see anybody, you know, if you really want to. And yet that's really not good for us, is it?
No.
Yeah, I was in New York City for 11 years and my experience was that you really couldn't hide from people. And you'd run into people all the time. You know, somebody be out in your Brooklyn neighborhood and you'd be like, "Wait a minute, what are you doing out here?" You know, it'd just be so surprising how many times I did run into people, even not trying.
Yeah, yeah. When I moved from the little towns where I had been living up until I was late 20s, 2 little towns that together add up to about 4,000 people, right in that thing, little tiny things.
Where was that? Where was it?
Springerville and Eager, Round Valley.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's where my whole family's from. So I lived there for about 5 years. and came down to Phoenix and was overwhelmed by the size, right?
Mhm.
There was a grocery store not far from us, a little Safeway. And I went over there to shop one day, and lo and behold, the same girl that used to check me out up in Eager was the clerk at that Safeway. She'd moved down to Phoenix as well. So it's kind of remarkable, isn't it?
It is really.
Yeah.
It is really.
Yeah. Wow.
It is really.
But a lot of this is, what do you do about the different problems that come up? What do you do about the Daniel T's, the Cyclops come and try
Right.
to steal from you? What do you do about the sirens that pull you off course and turn Pete into a frog? You know, all those kinds of things that happen in life. How do you deal with them? And how have you learned that in the midst of your relationships?
Well, I definitely think, like, for me, I moved out here I moved out here with my boyfriend. I think I was 23. And we ended up splitting up. He was my high school sweetheart.
Uh-huh.
And we ended up splitting up. And I just had a couple friends here, but basically I didn't have any family here. I
Mhm.
mean, and now I have a lot of friends, but at the time I remember feeling like maybe I should go home, but I didn't really want to. So I think when I did make friends, and I have one friend right now that I've known my first job I got in Tucson, I met her there,
Mhm.
and we're still friends.
Yeah.
And she's been kind of like that for me, where we've gotten into trouble together. We've kind of gone off, the wrong path. We've helped each other out. She's been there when my kids were born. Sometimes I'm mad at her and I don't want to talk to her. And same thing, she'll get mad at me, but we're still friends. We've done a lot of things together. So she was kind of like one of my anchors in Tucson.
Yeah. But isn't it funny that you, like I did, you came to Phoenix because of a relationship or with a relationship.
Yes.
Mine as well split up relatively quicker after coming here. And it was like, okay, what now?
Yeah.
What do I
Yes.
discover in the midst of this brokenness? Right. And you find the people that become the real relationship.
Mm-hmm.
The ones who carry you through, don't you?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. It's funny because I wanted to be out here, but I just, doubted. There were times I felt like, oh, I should really go back home where I know my family's there. I know people,
Uh-huh.
and but it wasn't until I kind of established myself and made some good friends, and that I felt like I had people that had my back, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
One of the most interesting characters in this movie is Tommy, right? The
Yes.
guitar player they met at the crossroads, who, I don't know, he might have said 3 or 4 words in the whole show, right?
Mhm.
Very quiet back there. And yet they walked through the middle of the KKK
Right. Yes.
in order to save him.
Yes.
They
That
somehow
was
found
impressive.
enough relationship in that and a connection to him that they chose to do that.
And that also speaks to their basic goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That they would see that and feel like that's not right.
Yeah, of course we have to do that. But I look at some of my relatively random meetings through life, and I would do that for some of them, wouldn't you?
Oh, okay. What
Go
do
through
you mean?
some of the people that at first glance I wouldn't have known who they were or what to do with them, but we became close enough friends that of course I would do what needed to be done to
Oh,
get
yes.
that friend.
Yes. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And I hope I never have to walk through the middle of a KKK rally in order to save someone on a burning cross, just so
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's what
Right.
life brings us into those very deep relationships like that.
And that it was ironic, on purpose, I'm sure, that the guy that was running for office, the politician, was part of it, and the guy that sold Bibles, the
Yeah.
Cyclops guy, was part of
That's
it.
part of it. That's
All
right.
these supposedly respectable people were part of it.
But doesn't that feel somewhat like where we're at too? Where,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that this person or that person is in the KKK, but it sure feels like they are espousing the worst of our definitions, the racist side of our definitions, the power side of our definitions, rather than what's the best of us.
Mhm. Yes,
No.
it does. And it feels like even now, after the election, which we still don't have results for.
Hey, by the way, I was going to tell you this right at the beginning. Here's the latest things, though. Georgia is down to only a 3,000 vote difference,
Really? Wow.
and
Yeah.
Pennsylvania is down to 58,000.
Wow. 58,000?
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot, though.
It is a
That's
lot,
a
but there's a lot to be counted there still, and a lot
Yeah,
of
what about Arizona, though? I thought they called it, then they didn't call it, then
yeah,
they
some have
called
called it, some haven't. It's
Yeah.
at 58,000 right now. It's been shrinking. That's the one place where Biden's making, where Trump is making inroads, is here in Arizona.
But mostly what's to be counted, I understand, is mail-in ballots, and those are more Democrats.
Those are more Democrats everywhere else, maybe not as much here. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
You know, I know I heard about Maricopa County, and that might have been on the election evening. The Maricopa County had actually gone for Biden.
Yes, and still is that way last I saw. I don't know that that's true or not, but it has been that way, which is pretty remarkable. Oh yeah,
It is.
it's still light blue.
So Arizona, I was really happy that, Mark Kelly won and that we looked like we were going to be blue. That made me really happy. But what I think really shocked me was how competitive the presidential race is, because I really didn't expect that.
I really didn't hope that. I hoped it would have been a very decisive one way or the other in order to make it much easier to not have division.
And it wasn't even that. It's so much as like, I feel like I don't know half of my fellow Americans.
I know.
That's
I saw
why.
somebody who said we still have to deal with the fact that 75 million Americans voted again for this person.
Yes. And after he's shown us who he is.
After he's shown us.
And so I guess that's the part that was kind of depressing to me.
Yeah.
Not that I'm depressed, but I just felt like, really? So I really don't know half of the country, because I really thought it would be different. I really did. I
It's
honestly
interesting,
thought
isn't it? Very interesting.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I had the sense it was going to be difficult. And, I mean, I do shamanic work, so I kind of tried to look into it on that level and see what I could tune into. And I got that, it seemed like Biden would get it, but that I could see the turbulence right after the election. And sure enough, it's coming true. And of course, anything having to do with Trump, there's going to be turbulence, even no matter how decisive this could have been. And of course, it would have been nice if it was more clear and decisive, but it still would have been like this. And he still would have been finding states where he decided that there must be more votes for him somewhere, because he's in denial. And he can't imagine that the American people have spoken and don't want him.
If Georgia flips back to blue, which it looks like it will be, you know that the first thought through his mind, and probably the first words out of his mouth is, what did the Democrats do?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
He's
how
already
did they steal
basically
that?
said that. They're
Yeah.
finding ballots in random places.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's basically said that, which is also shocking that a sitting president would say that
Mhm.
about the
Yeah.
votes that keep being counted. And so like the whole thing is just surreal to me, really.
But in a very real way, I felt like the four guys felt as they're standing in front of the house with the nooses there, and they're telling the guy who's been searching for them the whole time, but the governor pardoned us. It went out on the radio and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And you remember what the guy says? We don't have a radio.
We don't have a radio. Yeah. Yeah,
Right?
I remember like that helpless. The first time I saw it, I remember thinking like, because you get into the movie, so you don't think, oh, that's not going to happen. You think, oh my God, how can they, how can this happen right after they were pardoned,
Mhm.
Yeah.
You think
But-
they're going to die.
But in a
of
very
course-
real way, people tell the story that they want to tell, even
Yeah.
in the face of whatever it is that might be untrue about it.
Mhm.
They tell the narrative that works for what they want.
Mm.
And especially now when it's really, really easy for us to only talk to ourselves,
Mhm.
if you know what I mean. It's not that you guys aren't me. I don't want to say that, but relatively we think along the same lines. And so you reflect back much of what I
Right.
sense. I have friends of mine who do not do that at all. But it'd be really easy. Just before I got on here, I was talking with a man named Ettore. Ettore lives here in Tucson. He is of a much more conservative bent. And it's like, why do you stay in conversations like with Dean? Dean is my friend that I've told you about before. Why do you stay in those kinds of conversations? So it's because I need to, so that I hear more than what I typically hear. I need to hear how conservative Dean and conservative you, Ettore, how you guys are speaking. I need to know that.
Yeah.
And that's hard for us because it's really easy for us all to encapsulate into just hearing this much.
Well, and when I've read, and I think I might have told you that I had to unfollow a lot of family members, not so much in my family, although there's a few, but in my ex-husband's family.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
because they were so angry and so, totally opposite of how I think. And, but I feel like I do still read some posts
Mhm.
to get the sense of what they like about Trump, but
Yeah.
I don't agree. I still don't agree with it.
Right. And you don't have to agree, but that's not why you do civil discourse. You
But
do
I don't want
civil-
to talk to them.
I know.
I don't want to engage with them.
I get that because civil discourse is really, really hard in our
Mhm.
country right now.
It is.
And
Yeah.
yet, I just think that's part of what we need the most.
We do.
Because
and
otherwise, we sit underneath our white hoods and sing our songs knowing we're right, as opposed to really listening to each other.
right. It's and usually you work like I work with people. There's I would say mostly Democrats, but definitely some Trumpers. But I haven't actually. I've listened to them express their what they think, and then I don't get into it with them, mostly because I'm at work.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's hard. Well, it's hard because I read this somewhere that when you agree on the facts and the problems, but you disagree on how to solve them, that's one thing. But we can't even agree on the facts.
Right.
And that's a problem.
Right. Yesterday, post-election, there's a lot of people that are claiming all this stuff about voter fraud, mostly because the president is really pushing that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yet there's absolutely no evidence of, right?
Right.
We have bipartisan commissions that are watching, that are saying that, but they don't believe that anybody from their side is in the room, although that is, you can prove it.
Mm-hmm.
You can verify completely that there are both Republican and Democrat observers in every polling, every vote counting space. Maybe not every polling place, but every vote counting space. So what do you do when someone says no to what is an absolute fact?
That's what I don't know.
It's a really tough space.
That's what I don't know. You know, like it's one thing if you want to figure out how to solve economic problems, and there's like the trickle down theory, and then the, you know, this raise minimum wage. There's all these different theories, but you have to agree on some basic facts first.
Yeah.
And if you don't agree on basic facts, how can you even discuss it? Like what you're just talking about.
Yeah. It becomes really difficult.
It becomes really difficult. So, and if like, you know, again, climate change is another example. The majority of scientists don't, it's not a opinion, it's a truth. There is climate change, but you can't solve that problem if you think it's just an opinion.
But think about it this way. It's been over 100 years now that Charles Darwin talked about evolution. And it's not a perfect theory, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it has a lot more merit to it than the science that people are trying to place on the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because they want to believe something. Doesn't matter what the truth is. And that's hard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I heard somebody on the radio, the Bible Answer Man, one time say, well, of course there were dinosaurs on the ark. That's the purpose of the whole story. It's like,
Yeah.
you know, we do a lot of mental backflips, but it does make me have to say, where am I doing that? Where am I doing that in the same way? Am I believing things just because I want to believe it?
You mean just in general? Or are you talking about the Bible?
But no, in anything, in the Bible, in politics, do they have legitimate griefs against me for how I'm using for where I'm at with them as well?
Mm-hmm.
Am I just assuming things that aren't universally assumed,
Mm-hmm.
that aren't the best known fact? Right?
That's true.
Because when you talk about science, for example, science never has undisputed facts. They just have the best known fact right now.
That's true.
Right?
Right.
And so you have to both hold on to that fact and also be willing to hear if things change.
That's true. Just like with COVID, the way that their knowledge of COVID evolved.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
But my brother's a research scientist at Woods Hole,
Oh, wow.
and he's very angry about the way that scientists are being treated and that they're not being believed. I mean, he's not like an outwardly angry person. He's actually a pretty good-natured guy.
Uh-huh.
But if he posts things on Facebook, it's usually about that. I mean, his whole life has been dedicated to research and science. And he is so angry the way that, you know, scientists are being ignored,
Yeah.
or not believed. You
Okay,
know?
so watch this transition. Isn't that a lot like what Everett felt like when he goes back and he has his wife who's about to marry this other guy? And he goes, but I'm the paterfamilia, right? This is my role. This is the truth. And what? He doesn't want to hear her truth also because he has this truth. right? And he knows that they're still married. He knows that this is what's there.
Those are his daughters.
Those are his daughters. And so what happens when your truth gets lost in the chaos of life? Because that's what we're going through is chaos. And in chaos, things get broken up.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Something that we were holding on to maybe isn't the solid ground that it used to be. And not just for us, but for the other ones. I hope that there's a better relationship between religion and science than what right now my conservative friends are holding. But what do
Well,
I need to break
my
up?
parents, I was raised Catholic, and my parents were very Catholic, but they believed in science.
Mhm.
So,
That's because we've done a different thing with Bible. Okay. I have a quote by John Dominic Crossan, I think it is. It says the problem is not that they wrote stories that were literal stories, and we take things figuratively. It's they wrote things figuratively, and we have the arrogance to think that they're literal. And so we're taking the Bible to be what it never claims to be.
mm-hmm.
Right? The story of the flood, for example, isn't meant to describe a real event. Even if it was based some on a real event, it's meant to describe God's relationship to people in the midst of that event.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we do mental gymnastics to try to make it do the first instead of the other. So my conservative friends that can't think outside the Bible easily are trying to fit this into.
So I guess, like, I don't know a lot about the Mormon church except for my ex-husband's family was Mormon. I don't know how they have the new book, right?
They have a Book of Mormon.
The Book of
They have
Mormon.
actually 4 books of scripture. 2 of them are relatively small. The Book of Mormon is the main other book of scripture.
And is that cover from Joseph Smith, or what does that cover?
At the end of the Old Testament, as Israel is being destroyed and carried into captivity, here's the story. One group of people get led by God across the ocean and end up in the Americas.
Okay.
And for 1,000 years they lived there, became the ancestors of the Native Americans. And but the Book of Mormon tells the 1,000-year span from 600 years before Christ to 400 years after.
Okay.
So that's what that is.
Okay, but do they take the Old Testament literally?
Pretty literally, yeah. Pretty literally.
So different religions do different things with the Bible.
They do. The Mormons have a good relationship in that they don't have to take it as scientific fact like many conservative Christians do, specifically evangelical Christians. They take it too much as being factual and scientific rather than being truthful.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it did. Yes, it did.
So we've gotten off track of the movie a lot.
Okay, yes.
It's not a bad thing. I mean, talking about politics is a good thing as well. Because there obviously was politics in here because they were caught up in the whole battle between the governor and the guy who's trying to unseat him, the KKK guy.
Right.
So it's not like it's away from the whole thing. But that journey through life, which the story of the Odyssey that Homer wrote and was copied here is an ongoing type of story. What is the journey? Where does it bring us? And what does it make us into? Whether we like it or not.
Mm-hmm.
When has your friend been turned into a toad like Pete was? When did you meet the Cyclops?
Mm-hmm.
You know, how did you get sung off the course by the sirens? So you lost your way somehow. Who appeared at the crossroads and became an integral part of your life? All these types of questions, I think, are asked in here, and that's essentially how's our journey going.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, it's a hard journey, isn't it?
It's a hard journey right now. Yes, I would say that.
So
I
how are
would
you
say
doing it? What's helping you get through the journey?
St. Francis is one thing.
Francis helps. The hard part about that St. Francis is that sometimes what we've identified as St. Francis is being there on Sunday morning, getting that hug, sitting together, doing all those things that are normal, and we've had to figure out how to do that differently. But then for you, Siri, that journey has been a different one than that.
Yeah, because I wasn't coming to St. Francis, you know, for coming there. And so once Zoom meetings started and the service went online and everything, that's been a huge gift.
Yeah.
Because then I could do something I just wasn't able to do before.
And I wasn't coming to church every Sunday either.
Huh?
And now I watch the services all the time.
Right. And it gives us a chance to reevaluate. And that's what always happens in the middle of struggle, right? The problems that come up in life give us a chance to reevaluate whether we want to or not.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, I have to say I do like sitting home and watching the services. I do miss the interaction and the hugging.
Yeah.
But it's kind of nice to be in your pajamas and drink your coffee and watch the service, you know. There is.
Yeah.
Yeah. But hopefully what this does for us is it helps us remember what's the most important things to hold on to and to return to, you know, and make ourselves much, much better, not just as a church, but as individuals.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like I do miss the live singing and singing along
Uh-huh.
at the service.
I miss hearing everybody's voice.
Yes, and doing the and just like the greeting and when we do the greeting, things like that. Yes, I do miss that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I like in general, I would say one of the things I miss the most in general are hugs from family, friends, people at church, just like everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm a real hugger.
Yeah. And suddenly that human connection is gone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, same for, you know, so, and family and friends. I would say people, you know, people are what, and the funny cartoons, I think that's helping too. Some of the memes and the videos, you know.
Well, and what we have to work on, Mary, is we have to work on how to make sure we bring in all those really good things.
Mm-hmm.
Right? What do we do to make it so that we get back to that, even when we can't yet get back to? You know, what do we need to add to who we are and what we're doing during this time when we can't be together? How can we give each other more virtual hugs, so to speak? Do we have do we have opportunity? As soon as our thing is passed, we can have meetings of up to 10 people. What kind of meetings of 10 people or less do we want to do?
But but it's still social distance, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
mask.
still social distance, but
right. It's better than not. It's better than not.
That's right.
Sure.
So it's the question of what kind of things do we do, even though we can't be together 100, 150 of us. Is there a way to make a series of 10 people meetings, and will that get some of that need back? Will that bring some of the normalcy back to us? The good news is that that's coming, but it's not quite here yet. We're definitely not at get 50 people in the center together, but start thinking about what kind of ways you might want to get back together.
Mm-hmm.
Do we get back together to have it can go from the very deep to the very lighthearted. You could do a class together, that had no more than 10 people in it, or you could do a game night of some sort where you didn't have to, where you'd have to choose the games well. But does that make sense? We'd have to figure out what are the things we do.
Well, didn't you try to start, wasn't there, I vaguely remember you were trying to start groups.
I think one of the things that is helping a lot of people right now, there's a lot of people that have chosen some type of quarantine is what.
That's right. That's what it was. That's what it was.
And one of the reasons I did these classes is because classes become a type of quarantine.
Right.
That makes
Right.
sense, because we're together, we're talking, we're sharing. We
Mhm.
have a topic to be able to share on, but we can go to wherever we want to. We have to continue to figure out those kinds of things, if you're missing the connection to other people, how do we restore that for you? If you're
Mhm.
missing deep questions, then we need to find other people that are needing deep questions as well. Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
Mhm. So are you going to do something after the movies?
I am. Here's the plan. I was going to tell you about it anyway. I'm finishing my other classes this week, not the movie class, but the other classes. And I'm going to take a couple weeks off, and in the Thanksgiving week, right in there somewhere,
Oh, that's right.
I'm
That's
starting
right.
a new class on Maya Angelou's poetry.
Oh, that's right. Okay. I've totally forgot we're coming up to Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Yeah. So
I'm just so,
those will just be 4-week classes. But there'll be good classes to go to. So come to that, and even people who can't come to the class for whatever reason, I'm going to do several sections of it. But even people who can't come to the class, they can work through the little workbook that I have by themselves. So
yeah, I forgot we're coming up to the Advent season
it's
too.
coming, and the celebration team is working hard to essentially ask the question during Advent: how do we move from all of this brokenness and chaos into the beloved community? Not just us, but us as a whole. How does our American society get back to being a beloved community? And that's a tough thing, isn't it? In the movie, Pete had to decide, does he believe more the betrayal of Everett, or does he believe that he came into the jail and saved him? And what he does do is he chooses love, right? He chooses to believe him and continue to go with him. That's tough for all of us. How do we choose each other? Well, what I'm certain of is America's not going to survive as divided as what we are right now.
No, we aren't. No, we aren't.
So
And I don't know how to fix that either, really.
Yeah.
I really don't.
Well, we've gone through other tough times before, so let me really quickly give you next week's movie. It's called White Heat. I don't have a copy of it here at the office. I do have a VHS copy, but I didn't bring it in.
What year? What year is it from?
1949, 1950,
okay.
something like that. It's
Okay.
a film noir movie, right?
Okay.
Which is a really fun and interesting genre. James Cagney stars in the movie. It kind of deals with what do you do with the the ugliness of life, right? Which is right where we're at, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And what do you do when things are noir, black,
Mm-hmm.
dark, unknown? Okay.
Okay.
The best way to get that is through any kind of service. It's on Amazon, for example, for like $3. You can get it on
Right.
YouTube for $3 or something.
Yeah.
So
I've had to buy some movies for $3.99 on Amazon, but it's well worth it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like
Yeah.
I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
I'm not
This is
spending any money, right?
yeah, that's right. This is one that's very available digitally. So,
Okay,
so I
good.
decided that might be the best way for everyone to get it. All right.
Yes, thank you. Sorry I took us off topic.
No, it's all right. It was a good topic to be on, especially on a night when we're still very much in the middle of that election. So it's going the right way, though.
Hopefully.
It's just going
That's
slowly.
Yeah.
All right. Take care, you guys.
Okay, see you Sunday.
Bye-bye.
Bye.